Hey, Heath.
Hey, Raph. Morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
Really good, thanks. How about you?
I'm pretty awesome, actually. Our espresso machine is being serviced at the moment. And so we're on to filter coffee at the moment, which I'm really enjoying because you can have like 9 cups of filter coffee for every 1 cup of espresso. So it's like a all you can eat sort of a bottomless cup scenario. So that's awesome. I'm on my 7th, 8th, whatever coffee.
Great.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So what are we talking about?
Well, we've titled this episode "Why Do Clams?" But really, I think we're talking off air, and it's not really about the clams, but clams are really kind of like a poster child or a great example of what we want to talk about, which is the confusion between activating a muscle versus strengthening a muscle versus feeling the muscle working, and sort of a lot of muddiness I think in a lot of people's minds between those concepts. And I think a lot of people also use the word in Pilates strengthening a lot. And it's sort of one of those things that I think we say it a lot, but we actually probably don't use it correctly, or we're not clear on what we mean by it, even though we might think we are. So yeah, that was kind of a muddy lead in, but, yeah. So basically, what are because you and I both teach the diploma, and you teach a lot of the workshops and review sessions within the diploma, which is where you're interacting a lot live with students from around the world. And, so you see that they're struggling with these concepts. So how does that play out?
Yeah, I should be able to open my mouth and talk for hours on this, because it's one of the most common conversations that we have in various forms in the diploma is getting our head around what strengthening actually is, like what strength is and how you successfully do that with your client, and why it's important, and why would you do it, and what does it mean for what we think of as Pilates. And, within there is what we spend a lot of the time in our review and workshop sessions clarifying and embedding into repertoire.
So what do you think the elephant is here? I don't think we've pulled that term out in this podcast for a year or so, but yeah, what do you think the elephant in the room here is in this with regard to this concept?
I think, there's a couple, and I think for the instructor of the Pilates instructor, one of the elephants is that strengthening is not the same thing as sensation, or strengthening is not the same thing as engagement. So that a muscle doing something is not the same thing as it getting stronger. And embedded in that is, what does strength actually mean?
Okay, so the elephant in the room, the misconception is that if I can feel a muscle working, therefore it's getting stronger, or
That's
if a muscle is
double click on that.
All right. Or if a muscle's activating, therefore it's getting stronger.
Right, but how do you know, and what do you mean by activating?
Right.
How do you know?
Right. Well, I think that's, therein lies the rub.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right.
But just to kind of be clear then, because I think that there's a symbiosis there. For the instructor, that becomes the thing. But then in the client world, it's the information they're getting is that their glutes don't work, or their core needs to activate, and they associate sensation with that. So I don't feel my glutes work, and until I do, I'm not happy. So then the instructor gets into a loop with that, going, I have to give you the sensation of your glute working for you to be happy.
So it's become one of the deliverables of a Pilates class that people feel X, Y, or Z muscle working.
Right, which brings us back to the title, right, of why do clams? Right. Well, if you tell me that you need to feel your glutes work, whether I'm conscious of it or not, there's like a cultural shift towards things that make you feel the burn in that thing, in that muscle or that area of your body. which becomes success because the client is happy.
All right, and I'm thinking of the people who are listening to this now who maybe aren't in the fitness Pilates space. They're in a more maybe contemporary style of Pilates, maybe trained by Stop Pilates or Polestar or Bassi or, et al., which is short for et alice. Et in Latin means and alice means others or colleagues. So et al. Literally means like and friends, and others. And so if we think of those people, and I used to be one of them, it's, I put myself back like 5 years, 10 years ago, I would have looked down my nose and go, oh, we don't do burning, we're not, that like, gauche, we're not that like, we've got more class than that. We don't go for the burn. We go for form and technique and precision and control and breath and concentration and flowing movement, all those things. But the burn is not one of the things we go for. But I think in my mind back then, I was still definitely thinking about muscle activation. And so I was, okay. So I guess what I want to say is, with all respect and love to you, dear listener, is if you're listening to Heath going, oh, it's all about the burn, you're going, ha, ha, ha. I don't care about the burn. I'm, into muscle activation. I think like, yeah, we're looking at you too. Right. So.
Yeah. Cause how do you know? And again, I've been there. How do I know, how do I demonstrate to you that I am activating your muscle? Well, you feel it. And that's what I meant by the burn, right? So when the client feels the sensation of the muscle firing,
right,
they then understand that muscle's working, and that's what I meant by burn. Like
and something like correct, quote, correct muscle activation has almost become synonymous with Pilates, in many parts of the world, right? So, all right, so and
and in fact, there's an elephant there that somehow when you do Pilates, you'll correctly activate muscles more so than if you were doing running or by the nature of the movements, you're doing better muscle activation than other movement would
whatever
facilitate.
That means. Yeah. All right. So unless you never cue anything to do with muscles, this is for you. And I've got my hand high up in the air right now. Everything we're going to talk about, I've done hundreds of times. So, we are not.
We've walked this path.
Yeah, we are not exempt from these concepts. So, all right. So there's a confusion between strengthening and activation and feeling. The perception of the muscle, the sensation of the muscle working. So, all right. So, and we talk about Pilates strengthening. Sorry, we talk about strengthening a lot in Pilates. Like I think that, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but if we did a audit of all the Pilates websites in the world and all the Pilates Instagram pages in the world, I think the word strengthening would probably be one of the most common words that would, that would come up.
Strength, length, and activation.
Right. And so, but I think that a lot of times people are unclear on what strength means. So can we just jam on that concept just for a minute and just get clear on what we mean by the term strength? So Pilates makes you strong. What does that mean?
Well, So, within one of the things that I've found incredibly powerful for me in the last 5 years or so, and it's now explicitly central to the diploma that we teach, is that rehabilitation is graded exercise to restore strength, range of motion, and control. And it's the strength of the muscle is that its ability to move load from point A to point B, or the strength in your movement. And when we talk about that, we often illustrate it by saying that the purest expression of that, or not the purest, but a really good example of that is a deadlift, because you're lifting with two hands, both feet are on the ground, so you've got a really stable base to work from. your knees, your hips, and your shoulders are roughly in their mid-range. So the muscles, you're at your most efficient to generate force to lift a thing. And then you would measure that by how many can you do? And you want to find the weight that you can only do one of, but not two, and you'd call that repetitions max. And if you could only do one, but not two, then that's strength, because you could only do one. It's the most weight you could move from point A to point B in a given movement. That's how we often try to explain it, which is difficult when you work in Pilates, because you never do anything only once. And if you do it only once but can't do two, and you try and do the second one, it ain't going to be pretty. And Pilates is infused with your movement being, I mean, I still say this. I still find myself in classes saying, keep your movements as smooth as you can. I don't know. It just sort of comes out sometimes, and I go, what was that? Right. And so we're infused with this thing of controlled movement being the aspiration. But like we say to this, heavy's never pretty, right? So if you're actually working to fatigue, you're going to be shaky. And so then by definition, so I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but these are the things that we talk about over and over again as Pilates instructors start to understand what strength is.
So I think, yeah, like you say, fundamentally strength is the concept, is the capacity for a muscle to exert force. And the more force that you can exert, it's not just a muscle to exert force, it's for your body to exert force. So whether that's your arms, your legs, your back, whatever it might be. And so the more force you can exert, the stronger you are.
The stronger you are.
If you can pick up something that weighs 100 pounds, if you do a bit of a workout, a few weeks or months later, you can pick up something that weighs 110 pounds. Well, you got stronger. And so I think also what you said there about it's not a pure expression. There's no such thing really as a pure expression of strength, because strength is specific. So when you say someone is very strong, like really that's only half a statement. It should be very strong at what? So someone could be able to, deadlift 3 times their body weight, but can't do a push-up. I mean, that's probably a very unlikely example, but
you get the law of specificity, right? So what you train, you get better at.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could be very strong at doing overhead press with a barbell, but can't do a handstand. You could be very strong at, squatting, but if you do a
pistol squat, that would be the example.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If you do a workout with lunges or pistol squats, you might find that you get super sore afterwards, or have much less strength in that movement. So strength is specific to the movement that you do, right? So someone can be strong at something, but like just the general quality of strength, like I guess it has some meaning. Like someone who's got like twice as much muscle mass as someone else is going to be basically stronger in almost everything than that person, but not always. Like there are some people with a lot less muscle mass, like, say a gymnast would be much stronger in, say, supporting their body weight in a handstand than a power lifter who has like 4 times as much muscle mass as that person. So strength is quite specific to the task that you're doing, but basically it is the ability to exert force. And the more force you can exert in a given movement, the stronger you are. All right. So, I mean, and this is really...
So, but also the important thing, so not the important thing, but an important thing that we find ourselves talking about a lot, but again with Pilates instructors, because that's who I spend my time talking about, is the measurement of that.
Right.
So, so it's the amount of force you can exert, yes, but how do you know you're exerting force effectively? Like, well,
right.
Because you fail, right?
Right.
When do you fail?
Right. So, all right. So when we say the amount of force you can exert, we mean literally how much you can, just say it's a reformer exercise that you're doing. And let's say you're doing like an arm exercise. And so you're doing maybe, like the side arm work or something like that. And you put on half a spring, 1 spring, 2 springs, 3 springs, and then you get to a point you've got 4 springs on, you're doing sidearm work, and you're like, and you can't actually move the bed at all, right? So that is beyond your strength. Then if you drop off a quarter spring, drop off another quarter spring, and eventually you get to a point where, yes, you can move the carriage out, but after you do it once, you're like, holy crap, I'm totally cooked now. I can't do another rep.
Can't do another one.
You do it once, that is your maximum. That is your maximum ability to exert force. And so that is a measure of strength. Like, what is the maximum load against which you can successfully complete one repetition?
And that would be your 1 repetition maximum, or 1 RM.
Mm.
Right.
And so is that what, if I come to Pilates class with you, is that what we do all day? Like just.
Yeah. So that's how I run my Pilates classes. This is 45 minutes of 1 rep max, and then you take a 3-minute break, and then you do it again. Strangely, it's just usually me and the studio.
Right. Yeah. There was irony in that,
yeah,
folks.
Thick irony, right? Because that doesn't work in a Pilates studio. Yeah.
So all right. So when we talk about strength, when we talk about increasing strength, like the agreed definition amongst exercise scientists and researchers, and if you look in the medical dictionaries, etc., is the ability to exert force against an external object. And if you can exert more force, you are stronger. And that is specific to which object are you exerting force on. So exerting force on a barbell in a deadlift is not the same skill as exerting force on a strap on a reformer. It is not the same skill as exerting force against the ground in a handstand. So all of these things. So when you say someone got stronger, you need to say they got stronger at doing some particular thing. And so the test of strength is like, well, how strong someone is specific to how you test that strength, right? So someone can be strong at barbells but not strong at reformer, or vice versa. All right. So strength is the ability to exert force against an external object. If you can exert more force, you are stronger. So, well, okay, great. That's nice. Now we can quote our dictionary definition of strength. But so why should we care about that? And why is it important to be clear on that when we're thinking about activating muscles and, feeling the muscle burn and all of that stuff? Like, where's the point of confusion?
The point of confusion that we see is we explore what you just described. So we explore the definition of strength. And again, it's just, I've walked this path. The thought process is, okay, I don't think I'm doing that in my Pilates sessions. I don't think I'm doing that with my Pilates clients. I'm not seeing them come to that level of failure in any of the Pilates movements that I'm teaching. Am I somehow doing my clients a disservice? So the next question is, what's so good about being strong? Who cares? Like, why is being strong good? Now that we know what the definition is, I'm not really doing that with my clients, so maybe I'm not making them stronger, but they keep coming back. They feel good. They're having a good experience. Their life gets better for Pilates, but I haven't changed the spring tension on their footwork in 3 years. I'm not making them stronger because now I understand the definition. Who cares about strength? Why would I change what I'm doing? What's the importance of strength?
Okay. So, all right. So I think that's a really, I just want to pull out something there that you just mentioned in passing, which is I haven't changed the springs in 3 years. Now, if you haven't changed the springs in 3 years, like if you're still doing footwork on the same springs or the 100 on the same springs or whatever that you were doing, X number of days, weeks, months, or years ago, no, you haven't got stronger. And so when people say I'm getting stronger, it's like, no, the only way you can tell you got stronger is if you can now do footwork with more springs or the 100 with more springs that you couldn't do before. And so, obviously there's only a finite number of springs on a reformer. And so once you add all of the springs, there's not much further to go. You have to go to single legs. Right.
Yeah.
So basically the notion that, you're getting stronger, if you're not adding springs or some other way increasing the load, like sometimes you can make it harder by actually taking springs off. So if you're doing, a plank, taking springs off actually increases
Long
the
stretch
load.
on a half spring. Yep.
Right. But basically, if you're not increasing the load progressively over time, your clients are not getting stronger. Like, I mean, if you start doing footwork on 2 springs or 3 springs or whatever, you will get stronger for a bit, right? But then pretty soon that won't be a challenge for you anymore, and then you'll stop getting stronger. You'll hit a plateau, and unless you increase the spring tension or increase the load some other way, you're not going to continue to get stronger. So I think the notion, I think we throw around the word, "Oh, I'm getting stronger," and often we incorrectly, say the word stronger when what we mean is I can now do the movement more smoothly, or, I don't feel a burn when I do the movement anymore, or, I don't get sore after class anymore, or whatever. And so all of those things represent progress of a sort, but the sort of progress is not getting stronger. It's building control, or, the repeated bout effect stops you from getting sore, or, there are various things that you're getting better at, but strength is not one of them. So getting stronger means you can add more load. If you can't add more load, you didn't get stronger. And if you didn't add more load, you probably didn't get stronger, but you don't know until you add more load and see if you can move it.
Mm.
All right. So
you've laid that out really clearly. And then so that the next thing what I was trying to express is, and who cares?
Right.
Like, why do we care?
Why should we give a shit?
Yeah. Because my Pilates is looking better. I'm feeling better. I'm more flexible. I'm doing the thing without getting sore. Great. Awesome. Who cares about strength? Why should I give a shit?
Well, I would say there's a really good case for saying, yeah, don't give a shit. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? Seriously.
Yeah.
I think, like,
I'm with you.
I was looking at research on exercise during pregnancy the other day, and the average pregnant pregnancy we were looking at? Can't remember. It was cancer or arthritis or something like that. Maybe it was cancer. Anyway,
because we're in the middle of our special population section in the course.
Right.
So Raf's we're checking up on the research on all of these special populations: pregnancy, arthritis, cancer. It's not conflating the three together as a thing.
Right. And so I've got about a bazillion research papers open on my desktop here, and I'm just kind of like, sorting through them like some kind of mad scientist with piles of paper everywhere, and it's all digital. So I'm sorry, I'm getting confused between the different conditions that I'm researching. But basically, one of them, I think it was cancer. They've a meta-analysis found that the average woman with breast cancer exercises for an average of 1 minute per day, right? Which is shocking, right? Because exercise is so beneficial for all people and including people with breast cancer. And there's so many benefits to exercising. And so that really shocks me. 1 minute per day, that's terrible. These people really should be exercising. But even people without breast cancer, don't exercise. Like, we've got an epidemic of sedentary living on our planet. And, that's why if your clients come to class and just move, whether or not they get stronger, right? The difference between doing nothing and coming to class and doing something that is not perfect is so awesome that they're coming to class. It's so awesome that they're moving, that's awesome, right? So much better that they just show up and do anything, who cares what they do, just get moving. And okay, if strengthening, if we actually get them a lot stronger, that probably enhances the many of the benefits of exercise in terms of longevity, in terms of health, etc. But the vast majority of the benefit of exercise comes when you go from doing nothing to doing something, right? So I think there's a really good case for saying, like, who gives a fuck if they're getting stronger, right? They show up every week and they have fun and they participate and they move. Great. Everyone gets a gold star.
Right. So if someone does, if your client or clients or customer base or your mum has been doing 2 or 3 reformer sessions with you for the last 2 or 3 years, and you're hearing this stuff about strengthening and thinking, I'm not sure that I'm, actually pushing this person. The fact that they're coming and doing that movement, if it resonates with them, if they feel good for it, if they keep showing up, that's incredibly powerful. Like, it's incredibly important to their life, to function, healthy function, exactly as you say, Raph. It's the difference between doing nothing and doing something that you love physically regularly is like, that's the success, right? That's the gold. What we're talking about in this conversation is that the dimension of exercise that is strengthening is important for a number of reasons, but that doesn't mean it's important. If you're not doing it, then what you're doing is useless or worthless, right, or you should stop doing it.
Right.
And you touched on it briefly. I think one of the things that it takes a long time, and certainly me too, a long time to kind of get, is there are things that when you do successfully challenge a body in a strength dimension, there are physiological things that happen that are really they're unique to that challenge. And especially for some populations, like the osteoporotic population, there is,
right,
they are clinical. That's a clinical focus. You really need to work on that. But in the general population, if they love Pilates and they hate weights, just keep doing the frickin' Pilates, man. Like, don't stop.
All right. So, most of the benefits of exercise accrue when you go from doing nothing to doing something, right? And even if what you do isn't like optimized to maximize your strength, your flexibility, all of the things, right? If you just come along to class and muddle through, right, you're getting the vast majority of the benefit that it's possible to get. But for the general public, there are like reasonably significant additional benefits in terms of longevity, in terms of disease prevention, in terms of a bunch of other parameters, bone health, etc., that accrue when you actually strengthen, like progressively increase load. And for most clinical populations, so whether it's osteoporosis or post-surgical or a whole range of situations, strengthening is like inherently part of the treatment, because if you have surgery or whatever, strengthening is actually part of the cure, I guess, for what ails that person. So there is the whole range of cases where strengthening is really indicated, like osteoporosis and post-surgery. And then there, for the general public, like people who aren't particularly injured, but they just come along for the health and well-being benefits, strengthening, I wouldn't say is mandatory. Like if you just come along and have fun and move, that's awesome. But I think there are definitely additional benefits that happen when you get stronger. And for instructors and for clients, it's actually not any more difficult or any more trouble to get stronger than to not get stronger, right? If you're there for the 50 minutes or the hour or whatever you're there for, well, you might as well get stronger. Like, it's not more work. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's less work to get stronger than it is to not get stronger. So it's like, all right, well, if you could have it for free, if you get stronger for less than what you're currently paying, why wouldn't you do it? And when I say what you're currently paying, I mean what you're currently paying in effort and complexity of exercises and programming and choreography and like physical discomfort and all of the things that are hard about teaching and doing Pilates. Most of those things are less hard when you program for strength. Would you agree?
I need you to. So for the instructor that's listening, let's put that into a specific scenario. So like in your class.
Well, all right. So I guess I don't want to spend too long on this now, because I want to get back to what you said before about activation and feeling it not being synonymous with strengthening. But I guess what I'm thinking is like, well, to program for strength, once you know how to do it, it's really simple, right? It's not more effort than programming not for strength, right? It's just ticking a different box on a sheet of paper, and then you get a different result. It's not more complicated. It's not harder.
Yeah. So I think to that, one of the things, so in the physical activity guidelines, which let's not go too far into that rabbit hole, but maybe there's probably a whole other conversation there because it's one that we talk about a lot to clarify. But it says that, for the healthy, the guidelines recommend 150 minutes of moderate cardio, which means you're slightly out of breath per week, and 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week. And we double click on what we mean by strength training sessions per week. So it doesn't say that's what the guidelines say, right? That's not you and me. That's not breathe. That's what basically the whole world.
This is like the World Health Organization physical activity guidelines, or the American College of Sports Medicine physical activity guidelines for healthy adults, or the Australian physical activity guidelines, the NICE guidelines, National Institutes of Care Excellence in the UK. So basically, any peak body that recommends, health and fitness guidelines, this is what they recommend is 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardio, 150 to 300 actually, where you're slightly out of breath, and 2 to 3 resistance training sessions. And normally they also recommend 2 or 3 flexibility/balance training sessions as well.
Right. And when we double click on what we mean by strength, it's most major muscle groups go to near fatigue.
Right.
Am I summarizing that?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all major muscle groups to a point of near fatigue. Yeah.
Okay. So all major muscle groups to near fatigue. And so I'm saying this to illustrate what you're saying. So that means once you get that, it's actually very easy to make sure you've done that in a Pilates session.
Right.
For your client.
Right. So many of you, I'm going to guess and say most of you listening to this, when you did your Pilates training, one of the things that you probably learned was move the spine in all directions, right? Work the front, the back, and the sides, do forward bending, backward bending, side bending, and twisting. Well, that's just the same concept. Is basically you want to work all of the muscles, right? The front muscles, the back muscles, etc. And so it's not a qualitatively different thing. It's just a quantitatively different thing. It's just like how much load are we applying to those areas. So yes, you want to do forward bending, backward bending, side bending, twisting. And of course you've got to do the arms and the legs as well as part of that. But it's not really a different thing. It's just about the intensity, really.
And how you spot it. So, because remember, if you're looking around the room at your clients and you're wondering, am I giving these people all major muscle groups to near fatigue, aka strengthening? How do I know? Well, what does it look like when you're near fatigue? It doesn't look smooth, controlled, and you're breathing in and you're breathing. It's like it's getting shaky and a bit wobbly, and you really want it to stop. Well, that starts to be what you look for in your group. Every now and again, I want everyone to look shaky and wobbly, and they want it to stop. That's getting me there.
I want to slightly disagree on that want it to stop thing, because I think that is probably neither necessary nor sufficient for strengthening. So just say we're doing so basically in order to strengthen, right, there are many things that happen inside the body. I think we've talked about this in a previous episode. I can't remember if we have or haven't, but basically the main stimulus that catalyzes your body to start the process of becoming stronger, the physiological sort of cascade of events that result in you getting stronger, the thing that triggers that precipitates that is high levels of tension on individual muscle fibers, right? And so you need high levels of mechanical tension on muscle fibers. Now, how do you get high levels of tension on muscle fibers? Well, you can either move a load that is so heavy that you can't do more than 5 reps, or you can move a load that you can do more than 5 reps and you do it so many times that you basically can't do it anymore. You get within 1 or 2 reps of when you physically can't do it anymore, which is not the same thing as when you want to stop because it's hurting, right? So we can be doing clams, right? And, I'm up to my 987th rep. Okay. My bum is on fire. Okay. But am I going to get stronger from that? No, probably not. I'm wanting to stop. I'm like, for fuck's sake, Heath, would you stop, talking to that beginner on the other side of the room and adjusting their fucking strap position by a millimeter? We're up to rep 987 here. You promised we only had 3 to go about 100 reps ago. So I definitely wanted to stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
you
might
could
not
keep
be getting,
going if you had to. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. So then, all right, let's reframe that. So if you're the instructor and you're wanting to build strengthening into your program, what Raph was saying about it being, what you were saying, sorry, about it being easier than you might think, is you apply load to the movement so that the client in front of you struggles to complete the repetitions. And how do you know that? Well, they're probably looking shaky and having to stop.
Not because it hurts, but because they physically can't move the load. Like they're like, can I do it, Captain? I didn't have the power.
But it doesn't. But like, just to go back to the physical activity guidelines that say near fatigue, they don't have to absolutely fail. So, and I guess the thing that I wanted to just a great example that comes to mind for me that happens in my classes all the time. I only teach 3 exercises, and one of them is push-ups off the foot bar.
And the other 2 are cat stretch.
That's right. Yeah. When I do push-ups off the foot bar, I do them, and I ask the clients to do the push-up as deep as they can and still be able to get out of the push-up, and often get the question from clients, like when I do this, if I try and go deep and my elbows flare or my this or my that, and I'm like, that's fine. Like, I just want you as deep as you can to apply more load to the muscles through the range of movement. And if you fail, that's great. And they're like, really? It's like, yeah, because you just got stronger, right? Like if you had to stop because you couldn't do the next one, that's okay. And sometimes they're like, but that breaks the flow, and I can't do as many as that person. I say, it really doesn't matter. Like this is you and your body, and I want to get you stronger. Who cares if you
can't do as many as that person?
Right. And we'll move on, and there'll be other stuff that we'll do 35,000 reps of, and it'll feel more like, we'll do layers and flows, and it'll move from here to that. And it'll feel more like Pilates. But in this moment, we're strengthening.
So this is not something you're doing constantly throughout the entire session?
No, they wouldn't come back. And it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be enjoyable. And you'd lose all of those other dimensions that bring people back.
Right. So you might have a few peaks of intensity within your session.
Literally, that's how I think of it. Peaks. Yeah. Every now and again, it's going to peak. That's going to happen, and then we'll go off into another space.
Right, and that peak is where the person. Yeah, and I think push-ups are a great example because many of us have had the experience of not being able to do, the next push-up. That's what you're going for, is that experience of like, oh, I can't do it.
And
if you reverse engineer that, like, so if you video yourself, dear listener, on your phone doing push-ups, right? So whether it's kneeling push-ups, full push-ups, whatever, do them until you literally can't do another one, right? So whether you only do 3 or 17 or 29, well, it doesn't matter how many you do, but do it until you can't do another one, okay? And then review now, when I say can't do another one, I mean physically cannot do it, right? And then review the footage of the film, and what you'll see is like maybe 2 or 3 reps before that, you start to significantly slow down, right? So whether you're doing like 5 reps or 20 reps or 50 reps, it doesn't matter. The first few are fast, okay? And then as you get to a certain point, you might do the first 45 reps fast, right? But then 46 is like you start to slow down. 47, you're getting really slow. 48, it's like, oh, will they make it? Will they make it? Yes, they made it. And then 49 is like, and so you can tell when you're getting in close proximity to muscular fatigue or failure, where it's the point where you first notice that you're starting to slow down, and it's not on purpose. You're trying not to slow down, but you just can't help it. You go slower because the muscle fibers are fatigued. So at that point, basically, where you reach that point where as you're watching your clients, okay, if they're doing their push-ups or their lunges or their whatever, it's that point where they start to slow down, and it's like, that it's just like an old dog getting out of a beanbag or something. It's like they're moving through molasses. That's the point you're going for. And if you watch them do another 3 reps, you would see them fail to get out of the beanbag. So that's what we're going for. And actually getting to the point of failure actually doesn't give better outcomes than stopping 2 or 3 reps short of failure. It just gives you more fatigue, but not more strength. So, all right. So strength is the ability to exert force on an external object. If you can exert more force, you got stronger. And the external object could be a spring, could be a bar, could be your body weight, could be another person, could be a big rock on the ground, doesn't matter. But the strength is specific to the way that you test it. So the ability to pick up a rock is not the same thing as the ability to do a handstand, is not the same thing as the ability to pick up a barbell. And so
one's not better than the other. And
right.
That, broadly speaking, across the evidence, the guidelines, take the muscles to fatigue. So just use whatever tools,
right? It's
whatever
all good.
Exercises. It's all good. Just get to fatigue.
Near
fatigue.
Right. And so, you got stronger when you can exert more force on that in that same test, whether that's a push-up or a barbell deadlift or a footwork or lifting up a rock off the ground or doing a handstand, whatever. When you can do more load in the same test, you got stronger. And in order to get stronger, what you need to do is you need to have the muscles get to a point where you start to visibly slow down, which is 2 or 3 reps short of where you physically can't do another one. And you need to have that, you need to achieve that at least once a week. And the more times you do it per week, the quicker you're going to get stronger. For beginners, even just once a week, for the first few weeks, you'll notice that you'll get stronger. As you get stronger, you need to do more volume in order to continue getting stronger. So, getting to doing 1 set of push-ups a week as a beginner, you'll get stronger. But then after a few weeks, you'll stop getting stronger because there's not enough of a stimulus anymore. You need to do 2 sets or 3 sets or 4 sets or 5 sets. By the time you've been training for a couple of years, you probably need to do 10 or 15 sets a week per movement in order to continue getting stronger. And by the time you're an elite, strength athlete, probably doing like 40 sets a week in order to get like 0.25% stronger in a year. So there's a situation of diminishing returns. And it's not the case that everyone just keeps getting infinitely stronger forever. But in order for people to reach kind of their kind of, potential within whatever their goals are, right, whether that's a strength athlete or just a regular person, you basically need to gradually increase the number of times per week that they hit that point of near fatigue. Is that how you run your classes, or do we think that's even necessary? Like how far do you need to take this?
What happens for I think we're at a fork in the road in the conversation here. We're headed down into a really interesting point there about, it's a lot of Pilates businesses, and therefore, therefore the income and livelihood of the instructor relies on return clients, and often for years at a time. And what you've just described is that if you're working to continue to build strength, you have to, over time, increase the number of sets that you do that are taking you to that strengthening point. So stepping through that, whatever the movement we think about within Pilates, let's say it's long stretch. As you get stronger at long stretch, you add load. So you start on your knees on 1.5 springs and build up to straight legs and build up to full springs or whatever. Somewhere in what you just talked through does that client then end up just doing long stretch sets for 45 minutes because they've been coming for 3 years, and in order to keep getting stronger, they have to do 10 sets of 7 reps of long stretch on full springs, which I hope I'm illustrating sounds absurd. Like that, if that's how we're going to get stronger, continue to get stronger, and we've established that that's important, would that be the scenario? Would we end up with a class full of people who are just doing long stretch for 45 minutes? And at what point does that become absurd and you accept that are we going to let the strength plateau and maintain it? Is that making sense?
Yeah. Well, I think that, if people have just for health related goals, right? If people don't have like sport specific goals where they want to be able to, do some kind of heroic kind of sporting, feats of strength, for health related goals, the research is relatively clear that if you're, if once you achieve, once you're doing kind of like an hour a week of, resistance training, any more doesn't add further benefit in terms of health goals. Now, an hour a week sounds like, not much. That's only one Pilates class. But bear in mind, 80% of the Pilates class is not strength training, right? Because you're not actually going anywhere near fatigue, right? When you're doing cat stretch, not strength training. Okay. Clams, not strength training. Feet in straps, not strength training, unless it's your very first day and you've been sedentary for 3 decades and, all of a sudden you're doing legs in straps. Okay, that's strength training for a little bit. And then after a few weeks, as you learn to tolerate that load, you get stronger, it becomes not strength training anymore. So strength training is the parts of the class where you're actually bringing muscle groups to near fatigue. So it's the push-ups that you did. It's the pistol squats that you did. It's the one-legged footwork on all springs that you did. It's the snake. It's the twist. It's the control front. It's the, it's the long stretch on 0 springs. It's the, so those are the intensity peaks in the class. Those are the strength training moments, right? So if you string together an hour's worth of those during the week, right? Not an hour of momentary fatigue, but it's like, okay, think of like the set of push-ups that you did. How long did that take? Well, that might have taken a minute, 30 seconds, whatever. Okay. And then maybe a bit of a 3 minute break before you can do that again, right? So like you can do 20 exercises maybe, in a week that involve getting near fatigue. And beyond that, there's no additional real health benefits. There's no longevity benefits. You can get stronger beyond that, but getting stronger and stronger and stronger, like being like an elite powerlifter, isn't healthier than just being a reasonably fit average person. But you can, tear phone books with your bare hands, but it doesn't, you're not necessarily happier or healthier or more disease free for the ability to do that.
That there's gold in there. And so what are we doing as Pilates instructors? Like why are we, we're facilitating other human beings to exercise. And why would we do that? Well, because exercise helps you to live a healthier, happier, longer life.
Yeah.
Longer life, right? So healthier, happier, and longer. And that's what Joseph espoused too, that it was to do his, inverted commas, his exercises would make you more vital, live longer, et cetera, et cetera. And we've learned a lot. Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about this before. He didn't have evidence, but he happened across a lot of things that are now supported by evidence and a bunch of things that are not so well supported by evidence. But as Pilates instructors...
Don't brush anyone. So, yeah, and so the vast majority of those benefits, or I'd say the biggest portion of those benefits come from going from doing nothing to doing something, anything. Doesn't matter what you do, right? So come along to Pilates class, put 2 springs on for footwork. Don't do it in perfect form, whatever. Like you still get the vast majority of the benefits. So anything is better than nothing. Whatever you're currently doing, I guarantee it 100% is better than doing nothing. And so if that's all you want to do, great, you still win, right? But if you're coming along and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to spend more and more hours doing this every week, but I wouldn't mind getting more benefit for the same amount of hours, Okay. Well, then if you actually progressively enhance strength, well, you do get more benefit in terms of longevity, in terms of disease prevention, in terms of a lot of other health outcomes by progressively enhancing strength up to a point, and that point is roughly, an hour a week, aggregate of strengthening, which is, let's say it's like, if you did 2 or 3 Pilates sessions where you brought all major muscle groups to fatigue like once or twice during the session, there's your hour, right? If, and the rest of those sessions is not, technically strengthening because you're more like stretching or working on control or proprioception or all those other things which are valuable as well, but are not strengthening.
And they're all good. Like, let's not, so it's not baby in the bathwater, right? As you get your head around the idea of strengthening. It's not either or. It's an and thing, not an or thing.
Yeah. And so when we get to exercises like snake, twist, teaser, on the long box, a bunch of others, it is the case that we are strengthening and improving control or / mobility or all of the above. Okay. So it certainly doesn't have to be an either or thing. You can integrate all of these things within a single exercise sometimes. And then other times when we're doing something maybe like long stretch, that is more, if you load it correctly, is more of a strengthening exercise. There's not a lot of flexibility or control required, to do that reasonably well. And then there are other exercises where you could work on flexibility, like maybe say a front split, that if you did it like, as per Joseph's instructions, like, freestanding with your hands behind your head and did it on a light spring, that would be flexibility and strength and control. Whereas if you did it, say, with your hands on the foot bar on a medium spring, it would be like flexibility, but not a lot of strength and not a lot of control. So you can absolutely, adjust the relative, mix of strength, flexibility and control, within each exercise most of the time, depending on the exercise. And it's certainly not mutually exclusive that you work on one. It doesn't preclude you working on the other one, either within the same session or literally within the same exercise. But I think a lot of the time, this is my impression, and this is my impression these days comes a lot from what I see on social media. And I talk to instructors. I haven't done a Pilates class, like gone and paid and taken a class for ages, but because I basically never leave my house. But my impression is that I think we are biased a little too much towards the control aspect in Pilates these days. And there's a lot of emphasis on like making things harder by adding more BOSUs, bands, balls, layers, complexity, coordinate, dumbbell in one hand, flex band in the other hand, strap around the leg, sitting on a long box balanced on a BOSU with a fitness circle between the ankles. So we're making it harder by increasing the complexity and the control challenge. And I think there's a lot of that, and that's all good, but I think it often these days is at the expense of not enough time spent actually increasing the strength challenge, which is where for most people, most of the health benefits come from the strength aspect, not the control or flexibility aspect. Because while control and flexibility are really beneficial, particularly as we age and for people recovering from injury, being more flexible or having better coordination doesn't correlate with greater longevity, greater physical health, fewer diseases, or, most of those other health benefits that accrue from exercise accrue from the strengthening component of exercise, not from the control or the flexibility. So, all right, so let's get back to the start where we talked about, the confusion between strengthening and activation and, feeling the burn. Right? And we've done a whole episode in the past on feeling the burn, but let's go there. So if I'm doing my clams, right, and I'm feeling like a searing
white hot
fire, someone stabbing me in the piriformis muscle with a white hot poker, okay, in the middle of my butt. It's like, why is that not strengthening?
All right. Well, what the other question is, could that be strengthening? So if you're the Pilates instructor who's listening to this thinking, well, I do clams and I've been doing clams lying on the I'm side lying on the reformer bed. I've got my forearm against the shoulder pad. I've got a strap around my thigh. So I've added load and I'm doing clams. Why can't it be strengthening?
It can.
It can.
Add that strap on the thigh, whack on about 5 springs, bam, strengthening.
And go until you can't do another one, or when you slow down, it becomes a strengthening exercise. Right. So it's not the exercise, it's the load.
It's not a qualitatively different thing. It's a quantitatively different thing. So it's not a different thing. It's just how intense you do it. It's how much load you put on that movement. So there's not an exercise that is not a strengthening exercise. It's like how much load is in the exercise. You know, does picking up rocks make you stronger? Well, it depends how big the rock is. You know, do clams make you stronger? Well, it depends how much load's in the clam.
Great. Sorted. So job done.
No, but surely if I feel my muscles burning, isn't that the same thing as bringing them to near fatigue?
That's the next question. So if I do the clams and I've got that white hot searing pain in my bum, is that strengthening?
And the answer, dear listener, is no, it ain't.
And so what is it?
It's called a buildup of free hydrogen ions inside your muscle as a byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis, which is a form of liberating energy within the muscle that we use for endurance exercise, which results in free hydrogen ions, which are acidic, which basically means you literally have acid inside your muscle that is burning your muscle, and that activates your pain system. And you go, fuck, that hurts. Because it does. It truly does hurt. But that is not the same thing as applying high levels of mechanical tension to individual muscle fibers, which is the primary stimulus for strength gains. Having free hydrogen ions roaming around in your muscle is not the same thing as that. Now, sometimes they go together, but they're not the same thing. And so, you know, having that feeling of burning in your muscles is something that happens as a result of anaerobic glycolysis, which is the energy system that we use in our muscles when we do exercise that lasts more than like a minute or so, or even more than 30 seconds. So it's basically an endurance form of energy production that we use, you know. So you only get the burn when you're doing high reps, low load, right? If you go and pick up something, like if you think of push-ups, right? Whatever version of push-ups, you can't do more than 10, right? So whether that's kneeling push-ups, whether it's full push-ups, whether it's full push-ups with only one arm, okay? Whether it's handstand push-ups, handstand one-arm push-ups, you know, full push-ups with, you know, your spouse sitting on your shoulders, you know, whatever version of push-ups where you can't do more than 10, right? Do that, okay? No burn. You 8, 9, you're going slower. Just made 9, 10. Can't get all the way up, okay? You get to the point of failure where you literally can't. It doesn't matter if I held a gun to your head, if I gave you $1 million, if, you know, whatever, if a genie would grant you 3 wishes, you can't do another one. So when you get to that point and you haven't done 10 yet, no burn, because you've used a different energy system. You've used your short-term phosphocreatine system, which doesn't produce free hydrogen ions as a byproduct. So hence no acidity in your muscle, hence no burn, but you have applied high levels of mechanical tension to individual muscle fibers. So hence stimulus for strengthening. Now, if you don't have to do less than 10 to get stronger, you can do 12, 14, 16, 20 and still get stronger, right? But the sensation of burning produced by free hydrogen ions is not the same thing as high levels of mechanical tension on individual muscle fibers produced by getting to proximity to failure. They're just not the same thing, right? So you can have burning in your muscles with or without being anywhere near failure. And so you can have burning in your muscles with or without a stimulus to get stronger.
Okay. There's a couple of things in there I think we should double click on. One, the most recent one was just then. So if I'm a Pilates instructor who is taking a client to the burn, not whether I intend that or not, is there a benefit are they getting something? Are they getting better at something? So when I've got the burn and I push through it for a bit and I come out and I'm whacking my butt after those clams of just, and I've been going for, let's say, 60 to 90 seconds of the various movements of the various layers of the clam. But fundamentally, I'm doing clams, my butt's burning, I put up with it, I get to the end, I'm like, oh, God, I need it done. I rub my bum, and it's all of that. We all know that from Pilates. Did I just get better at something?
Yeah, the body's amazing. You adapt to whatever you do.
Yep. And right? Is there a benefit to getting better at that? Is there a health benefit to being good at clams for 2 minutes?
As opposed to lying on the sofa and eating Cheetos, fuck yes. Right?
Yeah. Great.
So there is a health benefit to doing literally any form of movement as opposed to doing no form of movement, right? So if your form of movement is doing clams until your butt burns and you'd have to punch yourself in the butt, like that's fucking awesome. Go you, keep going, right? It's great. If that's what you love, if that's what you think, like, I can't wait to get to Pilates to do that, and that's what motivates you, don't change it. Keep doing it, right? But if you're in Pilates going, all right, I've been coming to Pilates for a while, or I've been teaching Pilates for a while, I've got clients who've been coming for a while, and I want them to continue to progress and get stronger and get more health benefits from Pilates, okay? Well, probably doing clams until your butt burns is not the best, most effective way of achieving that.
All right. And then the other thing I wanted to go to is we've just spent a good portion of time establishing the importance and the value to the human of strengthening exercise, that it's not the movement so much as the load. So you can do your strengthening basically anywhere as long as you can apply load and you get to that degree of challenge, to near fatigue. Then we talked about, the burn, and I think that was great the way you described what's actually happening when you get the burn versus what's happening in the sub 10 rep effort. There's another thing which I think clams becomes a representative of. Maybe this is more in a clinical space. And so the question that I'm asking as the instructor is, well, I'm not separate to doing clams for 90 seconds. There's something else. There's feeling a muscle or muscle group working when I do a movement versus not feeling them work. So I'm doing lunges. I can't do 15, let's say. So I'm roughly in a strength training dimension. Sometimes when I'm in a particular setup form, I feel my glutes work more than in another setup or form. Is one of them more valuable? Does my glutes firing mean I'm doing a better lunge?
There are so many levels of untrue assumptions underneath that question.
Yeah.
So, well, what is a better lunge? Defined. How do you define a better lunge? How do you know just because you can feel or not feel your glutes working? How do you know that correlates with them working or not? How do you even, why is it important that your glutes are working in a lunge? All of these assumptions, it's are they true? So when it's weird, we get back to this idea of good and bad muscles that we've talked about previously on the podcast. It's okay, yes, we want the glutes to work in a lunge, but for some reason, a lot of time we don't want the quads to, we don't want to feel the quads. It's well, why? What's wrong with the quads? They're an important muscle. You can't straighten your knee without them. Can't run without them. Can't stand up out of a chair without them. They're really important. So they are meant to work in a lunge. And what about the adductors? The adductor magnus becomes a major hip extensor when you're sort of beyond sort of 90 degrees of hip flexion. So the adductor is the most powerful hip extensor at the bottom of a deep lunge or squat. So, and then it's all right, so there are lots of muscles that lift you out of a lunge or squat. Okay, the quads, the adductors, and the glutes.
So, before we go into, I didn't mean to take us into the world of the glute as such, but I was just using that because the topic was
Good.
clams.
Thanks for pulling me back on topic. Good.
Clams. Why do clams? So what when I do a movement and I feel a muscle engaging versus when I do a movement and I don't feel the muscle engaging. I'm not even sure my question, but I know.
Well, I think the question is, do I need to feel a muscle engaging for it to be beneficial?
For it to be working? Yeah, for it to be beneficial. And the answer is no, right?
The answer is definitely not. Yeah.
So, but then let's come back to, for the Pilates instructor who's listening to this, whether it's from what you've been told is important, hopefully we're starting to dismantle that, at least for the time being. But also there is a reality where you've got a client who says, I want to feel my glutes, or I want to feel my I want to feel my quads. I want to feel my quads work when I do my lunge, right? So let's forget the good muscle, bad muscle conversation. That's just a customer. Fundamentally, that becomes just a customer service thing, right? It's not that actually there is a good muscle to feel. It's just if the client wants to feel it a certain way, you can set the bones up so that you're biasing to them. I'm just trying to tease out this conversation because I know it's out there.
All right. So just to back up half a step, and thanks for pulling me back on topic. So again, the primary stimulus for increased strength is high levels of mechanical tension on individual muscle fibers, which is not the same thing as the perception that the muscle is working, right? Feeling your muscle working and having high levels of mechanical tension on individual muscle fibers are not the same thing. One is feeling, the other one is mechanical tension, right? It's possible to have one without the other or the other without one. You can feel your muscle working, like in clams, when it's burning, when you don't have high levels of mechanical tension on individual muscle fibers, right? And then you can have very high levels of tension on individual muscle fibers without any particular sensation. Like when you do and dear listener, if you have done, say, push-ups to failure, or even, I don't know, maybe push-ups aren't the best example. If you've ever done a heavy barbell squat, okay, like when you do like a 2RM or a 1RM squat, okay, I'd squat like 100 and whatever kilos, and I don't feel my glutes work. I'm never conscious of my glutes working in a deep squat, but I know they're working. Why? Because they get bigger, not on purpose. I can't help it. So like having high levels of tension on the muscle and feeling it are not the same thing. Now they can happen together. Or can happen separately. They're just a different thing. Right. And so it's not necessary for people to feel it in order for it to work. Right? It works with or without them feeling it. Doesn't matter if they feel it. So then, like you say, it becomes a customer service thing. And then it becomes of like, they want to feel it in, should I be feeling this in my XYZ muscle? Or how do, I want to feel this more in my XYZ muscle. And so I guess as a Pilates instructor, I would have like basically two ways to approach that. One would be like, okay, how can I just re-engineer the way that they're doing this movement a little bit so that they maybe feel it more where they want to feel it, and that shows them that I know what I'm doing, right? I'll just move your hip 1 millimeter to the left. All of a sudden I feel it in my blah, blah, blah muscle. That's great. You must know what you're doing. Great. Did I make the exercise more effective? No, not really. But now do they have, quote, evidence, unquote, that the exercise is more effective? Yeah. They know it's working now, even though it was working fine before. So that's one thing is you can adjust it, and that's the subject for a whole another conversation of like, how do you adjust it to so they feel it in here or there or the other place. But the other thing is, I think often when people say, should I be feeling this in my abs, butt, hips, whatever, where should I be feeling this, etc. Why am I feeling this in my blah, blah, blah? What they mean is, am I doing it right? Right? Am I doing it right? Am I going to get the benefit? And so I think often we can satisfy that, the sort of fundamental premise of that question without saying, oh, you should be feeling this in your abs, butt, back, hips, quads, whatever. We can say, hey, you're doing this right if, and then just give them some kind of form cue, right? So you're doing lunges right. Okay. You're doing lunges right if your hip is getting below your knee and your back leg is straight. Bam. Look at you. Just drop your hip down another 3 inches. Now you're doing it perfectly right. Where do you feel it? Oh, I feel it in my butt. Great. I feel it in my quads. Oh, great. I feel it in my adductors. Oh, great. I just feel it everywhere. Great. Feel it in the back leg as a stretch. Great. You know you're doing it right if. So those are my two approaches. How do you approach it?
I was just thinking about that. The way that I've found my way that I've solved for that, what you've described as you're doing it right, is I've looked for, and in a lot of cases been successful, and in plenty of cases I'm still working on it, instructions that just move completely away from right, wrong, whatever. It's just the aim of this is to, as much as possible, reach your toes towards the ceiling. Like the higher your foot goes to the ceiling in this shoulder bridge on a single leg, the more successful you are. And if I just insist on that, you're eventually going to straighten the leg, which might mean that would address your form concerns. If you think you're supposed to have straight leg, whatever, it would also make your, hip extensors on the driving leg work, would make the spinal extensors work, make the shoulder retractors work, so things that ask you to try as much as you can to reach in a certain direction, that the trickle-down effects is more and more muscles are going to contribute, and you're not thinking about your sensation at all. That's where I've tried to take my instructions. And if people say, I'm feeling it here, I can then say, as long as you're trying to do what I asked, whatever you're feeling is great. And I'm comfortable saying that now after years of practice. And I think one of the things that I've learned, that I went through and that we've talked to, and I know I talk about with instructors that I work with, is what happens when someone says, oh, I feel it here when I want to feel it there, or it's wherever you're feeling it right now is where you need to feel it right now. Like just don't worry too much about how you're feeling it. Just keep trying to do the thing I've asked you to do. If you need to stop, you can stop.
Yeah, I think that what a much more nuanced and richer way of communicating that than what I articulated. So well done. That's awesome. I agree with what you said there about. I don't think that it's our job as Pilates instructors to kind of be an a la carte service for where the client wants to feel it. I want to feel this in my X. Oh, great. Well, I'll solve that for you. There's like, when I don't think it's our job to produce sensations in people's bodies. I think it's our job to help people get stronger, more flexible, and better control over their bodies, and to live longer, happier, and healthier lives. But I don't think it's our job to help people feel a particular sensation in a particular part of their body. I just don't think that's part of our job. I don't think it's humanly possible. I don't think there's any particular benefit to it.
Yeah. Even if you can do it, what are you achieving?
Yeah. It's like, and it's like the client's asking for that, but it's like, well, the client doesn't really know why that's important or anything. It's like if you go to the mechanic and say, I want you to fix my alternator, and the mechanic looks at your car and goes, look, it's not your alternator. It's,
your alternator is working fine. Yeah, but fix it anyway. Okay.
So I think that's kind of the equivalent. And so I think, with love and respect, we can explain to our clients, or we can deflect, like you suggested, like, okay, the goal here is to try and reach towards the ceiling, or to stretch as far as you can, or to try and do as many as you can, or to lift your hips as high as you can, or to push out as far as you can, or whatever. And as long as you're doing that, wherever you're feeling it is the right place. And that's the beauty of the method, is it will get you wherever you need it. And we're all different. And so we're all going to need it in a slightly different place. And wherever you're feeling it is exactly where you need to feel it. Well said, Heath. I'm just paraphrasing what you said a minute ago.
Right.
So I reckon that was that was a good place to wrap up. But we've basically said that anything is better than nothing, when it comes to movement. And if you're not strengthening, that's fine. You're still awesome. If your clients are showing up, they're getting a lot of the benefits. But that if you want the next level, strength is the ability to exert force on an external object. When you can exert more force on that same object, you got stronger. So if you can add springs or take springs off, or whatever it might be, do full push-ups instead of kneeling push-ups, etc. And the only way to do that is to keep progressively adding load over time. And you need to get people to a point of near fatigue, which is where they start to visibly slow down in the movement, not where it starts to burn, because burning and high levels of mechanical tension are not the same thing. And it's high levels of mechanical tension on individual muscle fibers that are the stimulus for strength gains. And that you really don't need to spend your whole class, smashing people with pistol squats and one-armed push-ups, or, long stretch on zero springs. You can just have a few selected peaks of intensity in the class where we work up to doing something like that. And the rest of the time is on all those beautiful cat stretchy, mermaidy, etc., feed in strappy things. And you can even throw in some clams if people desperately need evidence that their bum's working. But the irony is, or the secret, dear listener, is that even though that person might walk out of your class going, oh, those clams are great, they get me there every time, it's actually the lunges that strengthen their butt, not the clams. But maybe they couldn't feel their butt in the lunges and they could feel their butt in the clams, so they think, oh, great, I've got what I paid for. So that is an example of giving people what they want in order to give them what they need. And so, did I miss anything there? Is there anything you want to add to that wrap up?
No, I think you summarised that well.
Good talk.
Thanks, Raph.